Reviewing an Agalloch album in 2014 with the window open, potentially sounds of thunder or rain, all depending on what nature decides to give us. The Serpent and the Sphere, their brand new album, Agalloch's that is, here in 2014. Has it really been 4 years since Marrow of the Spirit? Yeah, it has. I guess time really does fly whenever you're posting videos on an almost daily basis and having a lot of fun doing it. So, they, of course, also released the Faustian Echoes EP in 2012, which I don't believe I covered, but good lord, it's all starting to blend together. So, it's an Agalloch album in 2014. What should we expect? You know, what should we expect from this album? Well, Agalloch, of course, delivers a fantastic blend of dark metal, of avant-garde, of progressive, of, you know, doom metal, death metal. There's just a little bit of everything. Folk. There's so many hats that this band could, you know, potentially wear that it's actually one of the best parts of their sound. It's one of their strongest assets is the fact that they have so many minor elements of each of the styles that I just listed, and it's really something that's very situational, that it actually works into their, really to their advantage. And they connect to their listeners very well through the use of atmosphere and through their musicianship, because the riffs may not necessarily be technically driven. It might not be something that has just a shitload of technicality to it. However, these are riffs that are well constructed. There's a certain hypnosis to it, and there is a natural beauty to it, which is very well representative also toward a lot of their subject matter. Now, after Marrow of the Spirit being only 6 tracks in length, you probably look at this 9-track affair without maybe peering into the times of the tracks and think, holy shit, what the fuck did I just get myself into? Well, remember, Marrow of the Spirit had a couple of tracks that were, you know, 13, 14, and 17 minutes in length, and really just went a little bit overboard on that side. Not to say that that album wasn't terrific, because it truly was. However, it is one thing to also note that that definitely cuts down the amount of material that you're really able to put out. With this album here, with Serpent and the Spear, we only have 2 songs that eclipse the 10-minute range. And the very first one is the very first track on the album, Birth and Death of the Pillars of Creation, which serves as a terrific opener. If I remember correctly, I think this was the tease track that a lot of us got. Many people were saying, grab your tissues. I didn't have that same reaction. I didn't have that same feel. I really feel that at this stage of the game, Agalloch's albums each boast their own unique little differences to them, whereas some of them may have a little bit more of a doom-focused approach that has a lot of, you know, different natural and atmospheric, you know, transitions to it. I feel that those are the ones recently that really have been, that's at least the direction that they tend to be going with a little bit more. It was present on albums such as The Mantle and Ashes Against the Grain as well. However, it was done with a little bit more polish. There was a little bit more in the way of wizardry that was going on, and a lot of creativity on those albums also, including hitting a deer's skull in order to produce that trademark sound in The Mantle. Now, this is an album that I think is just ripe with a lot of great transitional deviation as well as overall consistency. The one thing I do enjoy about this album is that there's 3 tracks that seem to be mainly just acoustically driven, and it seems to be part of a nice little 3-part acoustic passage that is more geared towards the Serpent side of the Serpent in the Sphere. We have 1 track that happens directly after our majestic 10-minute long first track, and then we have another that is the bookend of the album, the very final track of the album, and then we have Cor Serpentis, the Sphere, which is right near the middle, in between of Celestial Effigy and Veils Beyond Dimension. And I really kind of enjoy this because you don't necessarily get assaulted one by one, and it resembles The Mantle in that way. Because if you remember that album, there were periods during that playback where you have some softer moments, where you have some moments of a little bit more ambient material, either that or a little bit more acoustic material, something a little bit softer to kind of bridge the gaps of the longer tracks that the album really possessed and really boasted. And there's just a shitload of them. In the Shadow of Our Pale Companion, the Hawthorne Passage, just the name too. With this album here, the big deal, the big monster monolith is certainly Plateau of the Ages. This is 12 minutes, and it's an instrumental. Now, you might think to yourself, well, how can this really be the complete Agalloch package if it doesn't contain those trademark vocals, whether it be the raspy vocals, either that or the pale whisper? This is something where you can almost see, similar to a song like the Hawthorne Passage, where Agalloch really is able to balance both their strong lyricism with also enough tact to recognize whenever they have something musically, a composition piece musically that serves well enough on its own that it does not even require any sort of lyricism. Something where the lyricism almost needs to come from the individual listener in order to truly get a unique and one-of-a-kind experience. Something where they are saying, experience what is around you, experience, as a higher plane, and whatever you experience makes this your experience, as opposed to, us delivering and telling you deliberately what you should be experiencing in this song. And I really love this track. It reminds me of trademark Agalloch, and that is a great thing. Not to say that the rest of this album doesn't deliver such things. However, this is the track that I feel represented that idea the strongest. And of course, it's an instrumental, and it's just a hauntingly moving piece of music. I absolutely love it. And it is something that is right near the end of the album. So if you have, if you do a playback of this without watching this review, or even after watching this review, yeah, you're going to be a little prepared or unprepared, all depending on what you have done. But it really just kind of socks you in the gut. It's something that's completely, out of the ordinary, and it really just delivers. It delivers very, very highly. This album, as a whole, really does deliver very nicely. It has just great periods where those transitions work so well, where we have those little breaks in the action that really launch pad right back into something that has a little bit more heaviness, either that or a little bit more of that atmospheric overall feeling to it. And I really love the fact that these little deviations don't disrupt the flow whatsoever. It's instead something that almost is like a break in between. It's like going to work and you work really, really hard maybe for 2 hours, and then you get a 10-minute break. And then you go and work hard again for another 2 or 3 hours, and then you get maybe a half an hour break. It's not quite like that in the fact that there's any that are really longer than 2 or 3 minutes, to really represent the half an hour as opposed to the 10-minute break. But it's kind of the same idea. You go through something that's very intense for a certain period of time on this album, and then you get a little bit of a deviation and a little bit of a rest to kind of mentally and physically prepare yourselves or prepare your ears for what's going to happen afterwards. This is definitely a solid album. I still think that Agalloch's their legacy has not been tarnished by this disc. I don't think that I still think that they're criminally underrated, and I really would love for these guys to become a lot more accessible, but yeah, it is what it is. You kind of have to seek it out on your own. That's kind of one of the big problems I've always had with this band not being in a lot of stores. It's not something that people can widely go out and sample. I would probably give this album an 84 out of 100. It's a tremendous, tremendous work, but it's certainly not perfect. The memorable moments on this album are a little fewer than it has been on some previous discs. Marrow of the Spirit, for all of its strengths, also kind of possessed this problem, but it was something where it was holding the attention for the entire duration, which they did, which is the reason why I feel that Marrow is maybe just a little stronger. But it's really difficult to say. I really enjoyed this album, and I highly recommend this album. I highly recommend Plateau of the Ages. I highly recommend Dark Matter Gods. And I highly recommend Birth and Death of the Pillars of Creation. But you know me, I love long tracks where a lot is able to be done and a lot is done. And both of the lengthy epics on this album do so. What did you guys think about this album? What did you think of Serpent and the Sphere? What do you guys think of Agalloch? Have you heard of Agalloch before? I'm sure most of you have, but if you have not, what do you think? What are your first impressions? I'll talk to you guys later.